You're listening to The Pilot's Portfolio, formerly called the Pilot Money Podcast. To learn more about the name change, join us in Season 2. You're listening to the Pilot Money Podcast, the show dedicated to guiding professional pilots towards a future of financial success and stability. Fly along with your host, Timothy P. Pope, as he provides financial planning insights and answers to your burning questions and dives into real-life stories from fellow pilots who share their successes and cautionary tales. The Pilot Money Podcast takes off now.
When you think about your financial position, is it a source of perhaps anxiety for you? Maybe things are a bit murky. You're not sure what your next best step is. Maybe you're frustrated about earning a high income and you feel like you're stubbing your toe. You're not able to meet your financial goals. You're not alone.
To put that in perspective, the average 401k in America, if you have one, it's 3, 4, 5%. At 18% company paid 401k, most 401ks require a match or participation by the employee. In this case, it's 100% paid by the company at 18%. That's like 4 times the national average on a paycheck.
Anywhere from 10.3 to 13.4 at legacy carriers and cargo, or if you include all the majors, that's going to be $9.7 million. That's a lot in terms of career earnings. That's before you do any financial planning. That's the value of your career for you to stay healthy, for you to show up and fly the airplane. So they're all congratulating me and they're saying, hey, doctor, now that you've got this new research degree, why don't you do some research on why we're losing pilots to the airlines? And then I presented the results at base in 2017. And all of a sudden, I was an expert. I was the guy people called to say, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? How do we retain our people? What do we pay our people? I know in his question, he specifically asked about how to structure his business. But I think what he really wants to know is how to handle the looming tax bill, right? So what can he do to bring his taxable income lower so that he can keep more of what he's earned? Every time, man. I mean, tens of flights, the same thing. You're so lucky. Your timing is incredible, blah, blah, blah. I left and literally 2 weeks after that, everyone got laid off. All these guys were telling me how great it was. Now the first officers were all on the street and for years. It's one thing to read it in the news, but it's one thing to be there and then to see the bottom just fall out. The biggest mistake that folks make when doing this is that they have pre-tax IRAs sitting around, and that will just destroy the backdoor Roth IRA strategy really quickly. And so you can use those losses, say, so again, $500,000 property, maybe you can generate $80,000 or $60,000 of depreciation deductions for you. And then assuming that the property doesn't make a lot of money in the first year or nets to zero in the first year, all those extra deductions that you're getting from this study is able to offset the W-2 income. At a certain point, when you've got your properties built up, pass and go is nice, but what you really want is for your opponent to land on your developed properties, because that payoff is going to be far more than what you could get by pass and go.
Money comes, money goes, and it can buy things that are really great and make things fun. And it can also really be an albatross, that's heavy to carry.
Just because something isn't currently in your financial plan, it doesn't mean you can't put it there. Of course you can, right? Your life is dynamic and so should your financial plan be. But having that mechanism to help you evaluate the purchase and the trade-offs is extremely, extremely valuable.
I've been flying for the airlines for almost 8 years. As a young FO, I saw a lot of these senior captains, and they're making great money, like insane amounts of money, right? But they're talking and acting like when they retire, they're going to have to live in a van down by the river and they're going to starve to death in a couple of years because they're out of money. And they're always complaining, I don't have any money.
This episode is for those of you who said, look, I am not interested in saving 50 or 60% of my income. I'd like to spend as much as I can now and hopefully be able to retire with the same standard of living.
I do think people deserve nice things. They deserve rich lives. They deserve abundance. But it's also really, really tough because if you reward yourself with a leveraged asset, right? If you become an airline captain and you're like, I finally get to buy the Porsche 911, and you buy that car with a loan, you're rewarding yourself with a monthly payment that you now have to make and you now have to feel stressed about making.
This one, hang on to your hats, boys and girls, because there's a lot going on in this question. There's a lot of limits that Adam is referring to. And in fact, I'm sure that a lot of you have very similar questions.
You can make a lot more money on the hot stock or a lot more money in crypto, but you can also lose that money really quickly. And in real estate, it's just a slow, steady game. But if you stay the course and you really learn, it's just incredibly accretive. And there's so many tax benefits that go along with it.
When you were listening to the previous episode, did it make you nervous? Did the idea of not contributing any of your own dollars towards your own financial future and your own financial success, did that make you nervous? If you raised your hand and said, yes, that made me nervous, I'm going to say good for you. When you think about not contributing any of your own money and trusting that the airline wouldn't make any changes that would negatively impact the remainder of your career, it should have made you nervous. This industry, as we all know, it's ripe for change. Things are changing all the time.
It's near impossible to buy a 172. Period. And if you find one, I knew someone who's putting a 172 back into a flight school. They bought something with hail damage. It had a new engine, which is nice, but it had hail damage and it had a hard landing. So it had like the nose gear replaced, and they still spent multiple six figures to buy that airplane.
Look, if you fly airlines and you don't fly GA or military, most insurers will be just fine. But if you fly GA or military in addition to your airline flying, then we're going to need to find an insurer that doesn't have an exclusion for that. Otherwise, you're probably going to get hit over the head for your military and your GA flying in the way of higher premiums.
If I could just say one thing about ownership, man, I've loved it. It's like anything else in life. If you budget for it, once you fit it into your budget after a while, it's no longer a burden. It's just an everyday expense at that point. So I love it. I'd recommend it to anybody. Should you change your investment strategy because it's an election year? That's a question that we get. And it's that time of year, right? We're less than 2 months now from the U.S. presidential elections. So we're going to talk about that.
If somebody sues me and my insurance isn't enough, the LLC will provide that corporate veil, so to speak, to protect me. And, that's a misconception in aviation, because if you're flying the plane, you're the pilot in command, you're going to have personal liability, and the LLC will not protect you for that.
The less financially burdened you are on year one pay, the happier experience is going to be throughout that year. And further on, like living within your means is so, so important. And I talk about that often. And that year is 365 days long. And it is, every minute of it hurts when you are financially stressed.
We've been looking out to Western North Carolina and flying out to these smaller mountain communities that are way out there with one road in and out. It's so hard to get up there by road. So we're able to take our 20, 30 helicopters and 80 to 100 airplanes and find little airports and get in and out of there.
This has nothing to do with money. This is people helping people right now. And as pilots, we have this unique skill set and people need it. When open enrollment comes, that is your time to choose. And it's important to make decisions that work with your overall financial plan, because you're essentially locked into the decisions that you make until next year's open enrollment.
There's a saying out there, you marry the home price, but you're dating the rate. You might bring extra money to the table, buy down the rate, and then guess what? 6 months later, a year later, the rates drop anyway. So that's a sunk cost. You paid that. You're not going to get that back.
The end of the year is a natural moment of pause and reflection, right? For me and for a lot of people. So think about what you've accomplished personally. Think about what you've accomplished financially. I like to think about, what have I accomplished? Who have I accomplished it with? And who have I accomplished it for? And then I like to follow up and ask myself, am I at peace with my progress? And if I'm not at peace with my progress, what am I going to do about that? Thank you for joining this episode of Pilot's Portfolio. If you found this information helpful, spread the word and share it with a pilot buddy. Or if you have questions and there's something that you would like to hear discussed on the show, send us an email. You can find the address in the show notes. For those of you who are ready to learn how we help professional pilots with their financial planning needs, schedule an appointment. Until next time, keep the shiny side up, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Pilot's Portfolio is hosted by Timothy P. Pope. Timothy P. Pope is principal owner of 360 Aviation Advisors. 360 Aviation Advisors is a registered investment advisory firm regulated by the state of North Carolina in accordance and compliance to the securities laws and regulations. 360 Aviation Advisors does not render or offer to render personalized investment or tax advice through Pilot's Portfolio. The information provided is for informational purposes only and may not be suitable for all investors and does not constitute financial, tax, investment, or legal advice. All investments involve a degree of risk, including the risk of loss.